What can past technology disruptions teach us about the future of AI? And which past business failures are the most apt cautionary tales in the AI era? And are you ready to have a casual chat with your friendly neighborhood whale? Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Know-How from Known Well, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. As always, I'm joined by Known Well CEO David DeWolf, Chief Product Officer Mohan Rao, and Chief Strategy Officer Pete Buer. We also have a discussion with Michael Hyatt about leading a major book publisher through the early days of digital transformation and how that experience can be more broadly applied to the AI era. But first, the news. Pete Buer joins us as always to break down some of the latest AI headlines and how they apply to your business. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Courtney. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we're going to kick off today with an article that you actually sent me. It's from the Atlantic Intelligence Newsletter. Get it? They're a little play on AI. And the subject line of the email is, AI may allow us to talk to, wait for it, whales. Pete, I was blown away, I guess pun intended there. What's the takeaway for business leaders?
Well, so the backstory first from the article is a team of scientists called Project SETI, C-E-T-I. They're working to train a large language model on recorded whale calls. I think it's sperm whale. And the objective is trying to understand ultimately what the whales are saying, interpret their sounds, see if it comes together as a language, ultimately so that we might communicate with them. You can't help but wonder what that first conversation might sound like. Dude, what's with the harpoons? Why do you insist on crapping up the ocean? Everything tastes like plastic, etc. What's kind of cool about this is a level deeper. What ultimately they're working toward is this notion of using AI technology to translate between different species languages, right? Like two people who speak a different language can hold an apple up and say the word for apple, and ultimately you kind of figure it out together. But with whales, we have no shared frame of reference. We have no life context that's anything remotely the same. And the notion is that if we can somehow figure out how to communicate with whales, perhaps we would be more ready to communicate with extraterrestrial life. And so the thinking is, rather than send pictures of life on Earth, we send a large language model out into space for a better chance that there might be understanding once if contact is made. I think the thing's fascinating. It's fun. The takeaway for leaders, think big, think to the stars, or maybe in this case, think to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I don't know that my brain can quite comprehend all of these things, but I do think it's an interesting indication of we don't know where we're going next. You know, the future is really unknown, especially at this moment. So for all of us, really just being aware of what's happening and the new technologies that we have at our disposal. Up next is a Bloomberg story titled, Sports Coders Get Serious with Advanced AI Software Assistant. Cognizant AI is releasing a tool called Devin that can finish entire software projects on its own. Pete, what's the takeaway here?
So the Devin story is cool. You can give it some basic commands and it will run a full software project. So the example they use is, quote, create a website mapping all the Italian restaurants in Sydney, and boom, here you go, website appears. That, of course, is very cool in and of itself. But for me, what's a little more interesting is just what this object lesson stands for as a representation of the evolution of AI capability within a particular space. So if you step back and think about AI in engineering, first it was finishing lines of code that engineers started writing, and then it became writing code independently given some appropriate commands, and now pulling together entire projects with the right kind of guidance, and in this case, creating a website. I think there's good advice in all of this about how to think about contextualizing your own AI initiatives. Get to market fast. with something that adds some amount of value. Maybe it's basic, but do it knowing and having the confidence that you'll learn quickly, you'll innovate, and you'll find your way to the next application faster probably than you ever imagined. Oh, and by the way, your own AI might help you build it.
Very cool. Love this story. Pete, thank you as always.
Love, Courtney. Take care.
Blockbuster, Kodak, Nokia, BlackBerry. The list of companies that were once riding high but are now remembered for what could have been is long and distinguished. So how do you avoid becoming one of them in the AI era? I want to throw this out to you. What are the disruptions that you've seen historically, maybe even specific examples of companies and disruptions that we can learn from today?
I'm going to say the innovator's dilemma, right? How to really break through the innovator's dilemma. I think if you look at the example of Blockbuster and Netflix, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, right? All of those stories of outdated business models that got crushed because an organization wasn't willing to disrupt themselves. I think that is something we have to keep in mind at this point in time. Artificial intelligence is going to totally revolutionize the way our businesses are run. And at the core, when we talk about disruption, it's about the changing of the economics in an industry and new business models coming up. That will happen. It hasn't started yet, really. I think it will happen. And I think executives, first and foremost, need to have that in mind and make sure they don't get caught in that trap.
Exactly. And it also depends on where you're going to apply AI, right? So if you really think about the theory of disruption, you can apply AI to sustaining innovation, meaning you keep your current business, you keep getting to a larger and larger and larger business. That's what you focus on. And then there is a new competitor that comes in and disrupts it because they have something simple, lower cost, whatever it is. So you have to think of both the sustaining innovation and the disruptive innovation if you're a big enough player. If you're small, you're obviously thinking about disruptive innovation.
For sure. What's the next one on your list, Mohan? Do you have one on the top of your head?
So I will go with Nokia and the phone. Right. I remember when I would visit my parents in India, you never went to the phone company. You would go to not the carrier company, but you would go to the handset company and you would go to a large Nokia store. Right. And then you said what carrier you wanted. And where's Nokia now? Right. So failed to keep up with it.
That's fascinating.
What was the change with Nokia that broke, them being able to continue to scale and innovate?
I think it's the rise of smartphones, right? So they had a worldwide massive market share with the previous generation of phones that they kept investing in. And I believe, I have to check my memory on this, but they made a late acquisition. I think it might have been a Windows CE or something, and just failing to keep up with Apple and Android.
What struck me about Nokia's story, Mohan, is they had all these patents in cellular technology. And again, in the innovator's dilemma, they were so drunk on the phones that were being successful that they really didn't just miss, they resisted the smartphone evolution, right? They were the leader and they fell hard because of the just resistance. Like, I don't even know how to say it more emphatically.
Yeah.
Like they pushed it off and said, no, this isn't going to really happen. And I find that a fascinating lesson.
And it's so hard, right? So when you think of those companies, they've got a worldwide market share. There are different pressures. There's more marketing to be done in XYZ country. And so you really kind of say, this is real and here now, I'm going to invest in this as opposed to something that I don't see yet.
Yeah. Yeah. They really overestimated their strength because of their patent portfolio, as I understand it, surrounding cellular technology. And it really wasn't what the differentiator was anymore.
Actually, it was the reverse of what I said. It was Microsoft that acquired Nokia too late and
That's
had
right.
to write it off.
That's right. Yeah. The next one I'm going to throw out there, I think a fascinating case study is the case study of Carfax. Carfax has been around for a long time. They used to Carfax. They actually used the facsimile machine. Most of our listeners probably don't even know what that is, or have never sent one. But to send these reports on cars, and what they had that was unique, and I love this, is a data source. They had a proprietary set of data. But here's the thing about it that I love is insightful. Because of their history in, the fax machine and faxing these reports, they had the unrivaled capability they had. It wasn't actually the data itself. Their data is actually publicly sourced data. They just had thousands and thousands of feeds that they were integrating to create proprietary insights in that data that nobody could replicate. And that data asset was incredibly powerful for fueling what they were going to do. They had one of these raw materials of the digital age in this proprietary data asset that allowed them to just take off and to grow and expand and pivot and find new business models, really going from being a B2C to a B2B company, right? Working with the dealers and those types of shifts along the way. And that's just a fascinating case study to me of the power of data in this digital age. And I believe the power of that data will be even more with artificial intelligence. But I think so often we just assume that having all of this massive data that nobody else has, like a Facebook or a Google, gives them a competitive advantage. But here's Carfax. They were a small fledgling little company at the time, and all they were doing was integrating other people's data to make their own proprietary insights and data out of it, and they leveraged that. And so I think we can all take a lesson from that, not just write things off because we're not Google and don't have access to all this information.
Let me give you an example from the world of financial services. Banks generally have focused on commercial lending and personal consumer lending, right? So that, and historically have not been focused just because they can't invest. Even banks can't invest across the board. And they didn't invest a lot in small business lending, right? It was always like the middle child between the two, consumer and commercial lending. So in the last 10 years, mobile POS type companies, Square, Clover, Toast, came in and just took away that in small business segments that are specific, like restaurants and others, where if you need small same day financing, it is just a click on the dashboard and you get financing. So that was an example that I think of often.
I love what you just did there in picking an industry. Let me throw a few industries out to you. Let's keep our game playing going on this time around. I think of media as an interesting industry where total disruption has happened. And again, when I think total disruption, it's not the introduction of technology to optimize something, right? It is the changing of the economics of how money flows within an industry, right? Media totally disrupted. What can we learn from that, Mohan, when you think through that example of how, we've been able to go direct to consumer, and the content producers are more powerful and the publishers have been rearranged and all of that type of thing?
Yeah, you see, you think of Netflix more than anything else, right? Mm-hmm. So there was no Netflix, and they focused on the power of content over distribution and then built a distribution on the internet. I don't know if that's the category that you were thinking of, but that's more entertainment more than media. It's an example of a company coming out of nowhere if you take last 15, 20 years out in the horizon. And even they themselves disrupted their business model from mailing DVDs to streaming. Right? So that was brilliant.
The other interesting thing with Netflix is to look at who also would have been poised to be able to do that. Obviously, you're like, all these networks had all the resources, they could have done it. But also you can look at another disruptor in Redbox who could have had the same trajectory but didn't. And I think you still see some Redboxes out there, but you're like, this thing isn't going to be here much longer.
Definitely. And there are whole categories that have really gone away, right? I remember growing up reading the newspaper all the time. So another end of the spectrum for media, right? Of like, I loved the sports page and ripping it open every morning. And I remember, pouring through it on a Saturday morning and looking at the box scores. And, what happened to the vast majority of newspapers, right? And some made it, right? And I think the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times are still doing pretty well, but they've really evolved from being newspapers to digital media companies. And they've had to do that. Whereas there are a ton of newspapers that have just gone away and collapsed, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's example after example in media of what has happened. It used to be ruled by a couple of big few cable companies, for example, and don't really have any power anymore. And I think a lot of them are going by the wayside. And the ones that aren't are the Comcasts of the world that transitioned themselves to be multimedia companies versus just a cable provider.
Courtney, David, what do you think happened to Toys R Us?
There's another great example.
One of the interesting things that's been happening in the book industry is the new CEO at Barnes & Noble is reinventing the company by creating Barnes & Noble as a series of independent bookstores in each community. Right. So the Barnes & Noble we have here in this area is essentially going to be run as an independent bookstore with community events and the store manager and staff have the power over saying, these are the books we want in our store. So it'll be an interesting experiment to see if you can kind of do a local strategy to beat the national strategy.
There's so much more than just the technology at play. And so I would say Toys R Us, I think that's a branding story to some extent as well. I think brand became more and more important, and the Toys R Us brand, there was an affinity in the heart of a certain generation because they grew up going through and that was the only way they could see stores. I think it lost a generation because it didn't find a way to reach the individuals that were getting iPads when they were 3 years old, right? And that type of thing. And so I think you saw a decline related to brand affinity going down. And that's interesting because when we think about technological waves, we don't go there right away. The other one that I notice with Toys R Us, what I remember about that story is their debt load more than anything else is what crushed them. And I think going through periods of change, especially, right, we already have a huge impact in this economy because so many of these businesses have been purchased by private equity and been financially engineered that they don't necessarily have healthy balance sheets, right? Making sure that as you go through a period of disruption that you have a healthy balance sheet and you have the ability to navigate through what will be turbulent times. It'll be volatile. They may be up, but you've got still to invest in the up, right? It may be down and you want to be able to survive the down. But if you're not prepared to do that, and I think sometimes we get caught up in the technological part of these points in time, and we totally forget those just business factors that I think leaders have to also be on top of.
Absolutely. And that's probably the story of Pan Am and Xerox and these brands, right? So there was a heavy cost structure, which meant that they could not innovate themselves out of it.
100%. You just made me think of Kodak as well, right? There's another one, the digital camera they had all the patents for and couldn't take advantage of. There's so many of these stories, right? History is just littered with iconic brand after iconic brand. Sears, like the Sears Roebuck Company. Wow. They were a staple, right? They were the powerhouse.
So many great thoughts. And, it is interesting. I think so many people right now, you're like, ooh, what an interesting time. I think we have so much awareness of what is, going to happen here. And maybe unlike any other disruption before, there's so much awareness for it. Taking a moment to just be like, what do I learn? What can I take from some of these other periods in time and apply them to this current moment? David, Mohan, some really great examples of disruption and some great points for us to look at as we move ahead. Thank you both.
Thank you. So fun.
Awesome. Take care. Bye.
You know what normally doesn't happen on a podcast? promoting other podcasts, but that's exactly what I'm about to do, because when your CEO appears on the wildly popular HubSpot sponsored Entrepreneurs on Fire, it's time to make an exception. That's right. David DeWolf sat down with John Lee Dumas recently to talk about his nearly 2-decade-long journey as an entrepreneur, what we're building here at Knownwell, and much more. So click the link in our show notes to go listen to that conversation. Michael Hyatt joined Pete Buer recently to talk about learning from past disruptions to navigate the future. Michael is the founder and chairman of Full Focus and the former CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishers, now part of HarperCollins. So he's uniquely qualified to share his perspective on the topic.
Michael, we're so honored to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Pete. Good to be with you.
For listeners who haven't had the privilege of meeting you before, can you share a little bit about your background, the company that you built and yourself?
Yeah, so I spent most of my career in the book publishing industry. I was the chairman and the CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishers for 6 years. At the time, it was the 7th largest book publisher in America. We sold it to HarperCollins, and then I launched this company, Full Focus. I've written 7 best-selling books, including 2 New York Times bestsellers, and so we published the Full Focus Planner, which is a physical planner product that's the bulk of our business.
On this episode, we're exploring different ways that leaders can learn from past disruptions to navigate the future. You were CEO of Thomas Nelson, as you mentioned, during a time of massive disruption, which included the advent of social media and the continuing rise of Amazon and more. What lessons did you learn at that time that might help other leaders now trying to appreciate and make sense of this moment of disruption that we're now facing with AI?
You know, Pete, I think we see disruption as kind of an anomaly. You know, like it's something that shouldn't happen and occasionally does happen. And then oftentimes leaders panic when it does happen. But the truth is, disruption, as we're increasingly seeing, is a way of life. My wife and I have been watching Masters of the Air on Apple Plus TV, and it's about B-17 pilots in World War II. And World War II is a massive, massive disruption. You know, people thought it was going to be over in a year. It drug on like for 5 years, and it was just seemed like no end was in sight. But I think, honestly, the best way to be resilient is to not have the expectation that the disruption is something abnormal and it's never going to happen again, and you just got to white knuckle it through it. I think the more you can normalize it and say, well, you know, this is just business, and I get paid to solve problems, and I got more problems than usual, so it's a good thing.
In conversations with heads of HR, leadership, human capital, there's a lot of discussion around the fact that, you know, change management as a leadership skill isn't something that you do sporadically or around an initiative. It's just how you lead. Is that sort of consistent with your view?
Absolutely. Yep. I can remember when I first started as the CEO of Thomas Nelson, one of my direct reports, his executive assistant, after I had initiated some kind of change, said to her boss, and unfortunately for her, copied me, she said, why does he have to keep changing things? And so I addressed it with her boss, and I just said, you know, honestly, change is normal. And any organization that is not changing is going to go extinct. And so I think, again, the more we can normalize that for people, the easier it's going to be for them to confront it and deal productively with it.
So we're always going through periods of change, though one might suggest that the AI has introduced a little bit of momentum to this particular phase of life and the magnitude of change that businesses are going through now. We refer to it as an opportunity for transformation. In your role, you've seen and driven transformation many times, and in big ways. You've transformed your own role as a leader of a big business to entrepreneur, and you've also taken your businesses from services focus to a more product offering with the Full Focus Planner and so forth. A couple questions here. How do you know when it's time to transform?
I think the numbers will speak to you. In other words, I think that whatever it was doing, whatever you were doing that was working may not be working quite as well as it used to. And you may be seeing a slowdown in a particular service offering or a product offering. And I think that's a signal from the market that maybe it's time to either innovate or upgrade or exit. And I think you just got to pay attention to that. Nothing's forever. It'd be nice if we could just come up with one product and just put that out there forever and it'd be fine. But we constantly have to be accommodating to the needs of the marketplace. And our products are generally designed to solve a specific need, but those needs change over time. And so the need that people had 3 years ago may not be the need they have right now. I'm seeing this with a lot of my clients, frankly, where what they did during COVID, they got, frankly, kind of comfortable because they came up with some unique solutions and it was perfect for that time of the pandemic. But the pandemic's passed. We have different problems now. And so they're having to innovate and iterate in order to stay current and be relevant.
So if we've got a bead now on how to know when to transform or what the indicators suggest, do you have a method for transforming? Is there a Michael Hyatt playbook to transformation?
Well, I think, first of all, the leader's got to get clear on what the vision is for the new thing. Because the number one job of a leader is to take a group of followers somewhere. And if the leader doesn't know the somewhere, if they haven't identified the somewhere, then, it's kind of just a walk in the forest. So you got to get clear on where you're taking people. I think that's, critically important. And then I think you have to enroll people in the new vision. So talk about what's possible and what that's going to make possible, what the change is going to make possible. And I find that that's a very useful question to ask. Literally, what does this make possible? And then you've got to enroll people that vision, get them aligned to it, and then just work to bring it into reality. By the way, one other thing, Pete, I think it's really important that the leader in times of change remains calm and confident. Because if the leader's hair gets on fire, that gets passed on like a firestorm to the team because a whisper becomes a shout. Whatever people pick up from your energy or your demeanor is going to get amplified. So I think as leaders, we have to be self-aware enough to know that we have that impact on people. But in a positive way, we can have a really positive impact on people with our confidence.
Calm and confident, but of course not complacent. As we're talking to leaders in the customer base about where to get started with AI, pretty consistently the advice is just get started somewhere. Figure out what the problem is, but start experimenting, get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves. And I think that this notion pairs well with a concept that you've written about in one of your books, the idea of the law of diminishing intent. Could you share with us the theory and the thinking behind that?
Yeah, this is a concept that I borrowed from Jim Rohn. I'm not sure he was the first one to come up with it, but I'll give him credit for it. Basically, the idea is that the longer you wait to take action, the less likely you will be to take action. The longer you wait to take action, the less likely you will be to take action. And that's because initially when we have an insight or we have an idea, we're highly motivated. And if we don't take some kind of action, and I'm not talking about you have an impulse and you suddenly invest millions of dollars to create a product that you don't have any market validation for. I'm just saying, if you have an idea or an insight or something needs to be done in your business, the faster you take action, the more likely it is that you will take action. Because if you wait, you'll lose the moment. And so many opportunities are lost that way because leaders just fail to act because of the law of diminishing intent.
And do you have specific advice with the law of diminishing intent in mind for leaders trying to make sense of AI in their business right now?
Well, the next action most of us need to take is usually something pretty simple. It's a phone call that we need to make, or it's an email we need to send, or a text message we need to send. And sometimes we create this huge, massive thing in our minds. And I'm all for goals that are in our discomfort zone. I think that's where your goals have to be, is in the discomfort zone. But the next actions need to be in your comfort zone. It needs to be not a heavy lift, but a light lift, something easy you can do to just get yourself in motion and get the idea in motion so that you can begin to see progress.
We can all create new frameworks and complex ways of thinking about the thing that we need to do in order, rather than actually just get rolling and do it.
Well, it's true. And I think perfectionism is the mother of procrastination. And if we're waiting until we get it perfect before we launch it, first of all, that'll never happen, because to get anything, particularly a product offering perfect, requires input from the marketplace. So my general rule is if I can ship it at 85% of what the original vision was, that's enough.
Michael, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks as always for listening and watching. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on your podcast player of choice or over on YouTube. And as always, we'd love if you would share this episode with another executive. At the end of every episode, we like to get one of our AI friends to weigh in on the topic that we discussed. So, hey, Gemini, hope you're feeling better. This episode, we're talking about learning from past disruptions to navigate the future. Any advice?
Business meltdowns of the past show that staying flexible is key. Just like those buggy rideshare apps turned into smooth operations, companies that can adapt to eyes twists and turns will be the future rock stars.
And now you're in the know. Thanks as always for listening. We'll be back next week with more headlines, roundtable discussions, and interviews with AI experts. Hey, if you made it this far in the episode, first of all, thank you. And second, we know that AI is changing all the time, and so we've got you covered. Here is another great episode for you to watch to stay in the loop on what's happening in AI and business. And second of all, we'd love for you to subscribe. You can do that right here. I've always wanted to do that, by the way. So do that now. That would be great.